Hey guys, thanks for stopping by for another video here at alliseeisW. In today's video, we'll be talking about the latest updates for Bitcoin. How high is Bitcoin really going to go in this cycle? We'll also be covering latest updates with strategy MSTR. Today, we experienced the sell the news, and most of you are wondering, is Bitcoin going to start going up? How high can it go up in the remainder of 2025? What does this mean for strategy? Are we seeing a pullback, or we're just at that precipice where we're going to see that next leg up with strategy? We'll cover technical analysis as well as sharing with you the latest updates with the big three Bitcoin miners, what my predictions of the price for these miners will be. Now, if you're new to this channel, first off, I would really appreciate hitting the like, subscribing for more related content. Let's begin, guys. Let's first take a look at a post from Fiat Archive. So BlackRock, we know, continues to buy up Bitcoin. They bought up another 1,000 Bitcoin. They're closing in at 700,000 Bitcoin. So, over 100,000 Bitcoin hodl compared to strategy, but they just don't stop. Fiat Archive also posts, $300 billion Japanese tech giant Mitsubishi to add Bitcoin trading to 100 million user reward points app. The whole world right now is embracing Bitcoin. We're seeing, governments buying public companies, retail, you name it. Vivek posts Bitcoin balance on exchanges hits all-time low, supply shock incoming. So while the price maintains stability over $100,000, look at the exchange reserve. The OTC is getting depleted, the exchange is getting depleted. What does that mean? Supply shock leads to increase in the Bitcoin price. Let's take a look at state reserve race. So we have New Hampshire as a first state getting SBR enacted. Arizona also got enacted with strategic Bitcoin reserve. And, not too long ago, Texas governor signed into law strategic Bitcoin reserve. So using, millions of dollars to buy up Bitcoin in a big state like Texas, that's going to ramp up states trying to get approval for SBR. And this is going to be a big race towards buying as much Bitcoin as states can possibly get. HODL 15 posts updates, just with the top 100 companies, nearly owning 850,000 Bitcoin, with that of strategy owning like most of it, 600,000 Bitcoins. Mara, I mean, just with their updates today with their production numbers, we'll cover that. I mean, they're hovering right around that $50,000 Bitcoin in the next couple of days. Mara will, go beyond 50,000. We also have Riot platforms, hovering, flirting close to that 20,000 Bitcoins. We'll talk about that, as well as CleanSpark, ramping up its hash rate, improving its fleet efficiency, keeping their, stocks, preventing dilution. CleanSpark is, heading up the chains as well, being a pure Bitcoin miner and not buying any Bitcoin at the current price value. Michael Saylor posts, MSTR generated a Bitcoin yield of 7.8% in Q2 alone. Think about that. A Bitcoin gain of 41,407 worth $4.4 billion just in quarter two alone. That just shows how HODL will just result in increase in the gains. It's going to be very amazing to hear what the announcement is. Q2 earnings report in late July, when we see the unrealized gains about $15 billion worth just holding on to Bitcoin. So definitely huge upside. Crypto Wizard posts is, an explosive pattern is forming. MSTR is forming a 7th month cup and handle. Once it breaks, it'll fly and Bitcoin will follow. Only a matter of time. Let's zoom in a bit, just looking at, Crypto Wizard's, drawing on the technical. So we see, a cup and handle formation forming. But what he's saying is that, new all-time rally begins above, 430, and we're gonna, get up to that $670, come month of August. Calio posts right reminder that anywhere in the green circle is free. 100 plus is a magnet. And just looking at the calls that he has, and these calls will be worth eight figures with, his call options with Riot platforms ending in September as well as, 2026 of January. So very bullish with his prediction. And, just a deep dive view, anything in the green that he's saying is the opportunity to buy because for every Bitcoin bull cycle, we've seen that big run up, with 2020 run up, 2017 run up. Will history repeat itself? Calio, Crypto Army, he believes that it's the case. Mara provides updates with its production numbers. One of the things that they announced was, their overall target hash rate of 75 exahash by year end. They increased their Bitcoin holdings to 49,940, 60 Bitcoins away, reaching above 50,000 Bitcoins on their balance sheet. Today, they announced that they mined over, 700 Bitcoins for the month of June. That's a reduction from its prior month mining 950 Bitcoins due to, weather issues. But overall, looks good. Slight reduction, but that doesn't mean anything. Target focus to increase their hash rate to 75 is big conviction. Professor poses, Mara, zero doubt on our spaceship candidate. Traders will flow in fast, process and patience here. So just looking at this drawing, inverse head and shoulders, he has that, potentially going up to the, $17-21 in the near term. Rex Finance posts about CleanSpark. Riley initiates coverage with buy rating and a $16 price target. Clean Bitcoin mining story still has plenty of spark. So definitely huge upside. Riley Securities, forecasting CleanSpark, soon to be hitting $16. I think that's on a conservative level with CleanSpark, having more than 30 sites across Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Wyoming. They've secured, many sites with multiple megawatts on contracted power, along with them hitting that, hash of 50 exahash, huge upside. And, with their goal of increasing the capacity to 57 exahash by year end. This is huge, along with their improved fleet efficiency. CleanSpark is definitely, another Bitcoin mining giant that's really going to start ramping up. Crypto Vici posts CleanSpark inevitable breakout target $21. I do think $21 is very achievable. We'll talk more just looking at the technicals. Looking at Bitcoin on the technicals right now, currently at, 105,535. We had a slight pullback from today, hovering at like 108,000, where it currently is at 105,000. Nothing to worry about. Key thing is we're still hovering above the Ichimoku cloud. Where we are right now. Yes, we did, cross the recent price with the 9 to 21 SMA, but the fact that we're still above the Ichimoku cloud, that's key. We had some pullback with the Fed rate cuts updates with Jerome Powell. Also, there's, tension between Trump and Elon, but I think that overall things are still gonna, be favorable for the bulls. Bitcoin is expected to break out, with Tom Lee forecasting Bitcoin to go to 200,000, even possibly to 250. Still very bullish. I really do think that Bitcoin is just primed for that next leg up. Let's take a look at strategy, MSTR stock. So, definitely see upside. We're looking at the weekly charts for the next parabolic phase. MACD, we see a slight, convergence on the weekly. Relative strength has been just steady around the 56, 58. But, with today's, huge sell the news moment, I mean, strategy dropped by about 7%. But one key thing to look at is like during that time of like January, it had a big pullback, sell the news. And then what happened? Things started ramping up, from like January to March. It went from like 47 to 178. And then, during that time of September, it went from like 150 to 118. And then after that big draw down, sell the news, what happened? That's when we got that big run up. Are we experiencing something similar where we're just getting that sell the news event, that sudden hiccup with the drawback before we get that next parabolic phase? I'm very well bullish that strategy is going to run up. Today was just a minor fluke day, not to worry. I do see strategy. There's huge upsides. Lots of people buying call options right now, hedging because a lot of people foresee strategy stock to run up in the remainder of 2025. In fact, let's take a look at the monthly performance. So on the monthly, key thing is we continue to see higher highs on the monthly. This is just showing the power, the strength of strategy hovering in this upward ascending channel. That's a good thing. We want to continue to see that. And just on the MACD, bullish on the monthly candle. So I do see that, we're just going to continue to trend up on a solid company like MSTR, eventually becoming a multi-trillion dollar company. This is what you want to see on the monthly charts. It continues to trend upward. There's a reason for why it's trending upward, and it will continue to trend up. MSTR will, become a $1,000 stock. On the monthly, we see continuous growth, and it will add shareholder value. Let's take a look at Bitcoin miner technical analysis, Riot platforms. We're looking at it on the monthly candle. We see ebbs and flows, zigzags. Looking at 2018, relative strength shot up above 81, went from like $3 to like 46, had a huge pullback. Relative strength started kicking into gears again, went to 93 RSI, significantly overbought, going from like $3 to $81. So it had that big pullback. Then it started running up. And then since then, we've been just bleeding out. We had this huge bearish convergence. It's been plateauing. RSI has just been quiet this whole time. However, volume's been picking up. Now, question is, will history repeat itself? Relative strength index is just sitting in the 50 range. Are we going to see the next, run up, on the monthly scale where we're going to see, potentially shooting up? We may very well see 40 to $80, and what Calio is saying is possibly even above $100. So let's see how history plays out with Riot platforms. Let's take a look at Mara. Mara with close to 50,000 Bitcoins on their treasury, just with the last bull cycle, back in 2020, it was like 44 cents, ran all the way up to $85. Relative strength at that time was around 90. What are we seeing? Just this bullish pennant flag on the long term. Same deal, relative strength's been just, in that consistent 50 range. MACD has just been, hovering in the center, not much fluctuation there. But we saw that recent pullback from like November time when it was $30, drop down to 980. Key thing is we're beginning to see, inverse head and shoulder on the near term daily, but just seeing that we're still hovering in this bullish pennant flag, definitely do see huge upside with Mara to break out of this long-term bullish pennant flag, potentially having a 3 to 5x gain. Let's take a look at CleanSpark on the weekly chart. So, back in 2021, we saw RSI run up to like 88. Price ramped all the way up to $43. And then come 2022, dropped to like $1. And then in 2024, it ran up to $24, within a matter of weeks, going from like $3 to $24, 8x gain within a matter of weeks, like towards, late 2023. That was when the RSI got up to like 80, but we haven't seen much activity since then. So are we going to experience a plus 80 RSI on the weekly? It's very well possible, but just seeing how this formation is being drawn out, higher highs on the support, and, we're seeing this, merging towards, potentially seeing CleanSpark break through that, plus $20 is definitely very well achievable in this year. With all of that, let's play a recent clip of Saylor and how he's saying billionaires will start buying $1 billion of Bitcoin and the supply shock will be so great that we will stop measuring Bitcoin in terms of fiat.
But yeah, because once you get Bitcoin and it clicks in your mind, your immediate reaction is, oh, I got to hurry and buy as much as I can because someone else is going to go take all my Bitcoin away from me. So, like in 2020, when I started buying Bitcoin, I was thinking, oh no, I got to do this in a hurry because someone's going to figure it out and the price is going to 10x. And I better get it before it 10x's. So, I mean, that's a natural reaction when it finally clicks in your head because you're thinking, why? Like, why wouldn't every billionaire in the world go and buy $1 billion of Bitcoin, smash buy it overnight, and just to make $1 billion? Because why wouldn't they just want to make the $1 billion or 5 billion or 10 billion or any amount of money? I mean, Bitcoin, it feels like in the early days, the infinite money glitch, right?
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would really appreciate hitting the like, subscribing. Well, I hope you enjoyed this content. Let me know what your thoughts are, how high you think Bitcoin strategy and the big three Bitcoin miners are going to go. Put it down in the comments. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you on the next one. Take care.